We have three people who have made enormous contributions in broad sectors of society: the internet, energy, and health. And first up, we're going to start with Tim Berners-Lee, who is the father and the architect, really, of the world of the web that so many of us live in. He is, oddly something, does not have a PhD in computer science. His degree at Oxford, if I recall correctly, was in physics. But his pedigree for what he ended up doing is nonetheless extraordinary. Both of his parents were pioneers in early post-war computing in England. He then jumped around from various different kinds of jobs, both in hardware, software, then stints with the physics lab CERN in Geneva, and while there worked on hypertext, linking of documents, presenting them so scientists could cooperate around the world. And he developed for his own use a software program called Inquire that became somewhat the prototype for the World Wide Web. Tim then, when he created the basic protocols, the alphabet soup that people kind of know, URIs, or URLs as many people call them, but Tim prefers URIs, HTTP and HTML are the ways we present, communicate, and interlink documents on the web. And he delivered these into the world really in 1991, and it took off from there. I recall, I think in the early 90s, when doing a story on Tim, talking to Eric Schmidt at the time, who was then the chief technology officer for Sun Microsystems, and his comment on Tim was that if there was a Nobel Prize to be given in computer science, Tim would have gotten it. There isn't a Nobel Prize in computer science, but there is a Millennium Prize. So, Tim, please. And I should also add, Tim is obviously now the director of the World Wide Web Consortium at MIT, which is dedicated to keeping the web open, enlarging its commercial and public use, and for his contributions, he has been knighted. So I guess it's Sir Tim or Sir Timothy?
Sir Timothy,
Sir
if you're going to be proper about it. Yes, but people who are knighted are often knighted when they run organizations that do good things. So in fact, it's all the people who work with W3C who are acknowledged when that happens.
Let me start with one historical question, if I could. Again, we live in the world in part you created the architecture for. If you think back to the start, if you had it to do all over again, would you change anything? What would you have done differently?
It's a good question, and of course, you can never ask what would have happened if you'd have done something differently. There's some simple things. In fact, when I designed the URI, the URL, this thing which starts HTTP : / the / was to indicate that we are actually starting at the top, that we're not starting down at the next slash, but the colon in there as well. It turns out people never use the / without the HTTP colon. It turns out really, if you think about it, you don't need the / I could have designed it to not have the // And boy, now that people all over people on the radio are calling it //. People are having to use that finger so much. Think of the amount of of print now that would have been saved if we wouldn't have saved, if I'd just removed the double /. But there you go. You can't. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Give us a sense of what you mean by the semantic web and how it might work.
Well, let's forget all these things about agents zooming around doing things for you. Just let's get down to the basic, the fact that on your computer there are two types of file. You've got documents, which may be letters you've written to something, and memos, maps, and things. These are things which are designed for a person. You can put them on the web easily, and you can read them, and a person can read them. And there are other things, like your calendar, like information or stuff on a inside a website about trips that you're taking. All this information, this is data. When you book when your airline books you want on a plane, there's data about exactly which flight you're on, exactly which seat you've got, and when it takes off. And all that stuff is things that the airplane, the airline, and they all need to know, and they manipulate, and they can bring it up very quickly, and they can check for equivalent flights. And if you look at that stuff on a web page, you have to read it, and you have to do things with it. And if you're going to an event, you read about the web page, and you can't actually, you have to tell the computer separately when it is and where it is, which is rather silly, because the sat nav in your car is actually a computer. And actually, if the computer knew where you're going, it would just be able to take you there. And if your computer knows knew that you're going to go to an event, it would know when it is, and so it could take you up, tell you the right place to go in the right direction. So the problem with the data on the web at the moment is that it's not in a form that we can actually use it. And people who use spreadsheets, anybody who's scientific, anybody who deals with financial data knows that you need to have the data. It's all very well having a PDF of the financial report results, but if they can give you a spreadsheet, then you can find out stuff about it. And so the semantic web is, at the basic level, it's getting that data out there. So now we're calling it, a much simpler term is linked data. Linked data, when it means that when I put data out there, and I've got some data about something, and you've got some data over there about something, we have a link. One of those things which starts with HTTP colon something, goes with a slash, goes from one to the other, so that when you pull information about one thing, then you start to pull information that other people have got about the same thing, the same flight, the same event, the same person, the same drug, the same disease. So, that's really, for me, it's important to get that data out there. And this year, 2009, we've had a big push to get government data out there. So if you're out there and you've got some government data sitting there on your disk, and if it was data that you would give up for Freedom of Information Act request, for example, put it on the web. Just put it out there. Just do it.
Let me just ask, from an analogy standpoint, the document is sort of the envelope, and the information in it is data?
Yes, the data is, if you like, is a little bit more abstract. That you can get the same information presented in a graph, you can get it presented in a table, the data is still the same. If you give me the data, I can make a graph, I can make a table. If you give me the graph, I'm stuck. I have to bring it up. Steve, really nice article. I love the picture. Can you give me the data behind that? Okay, now to save everybody, just imagine everybody in the world rang everybody who put interesting information up there on the web and said, can you give me the data behind that? And so everybody in the world who had data decided, oh, no, I'm not going to send it to you. I'm going to stick it on the web too. Then life would be really interesting, because there's lots of information hidden in that data.
And the New York City's done a lot of this, and they're releasing data that people then can use, presumably mashups, right? They can make programs. What's the value here? I mean, there's huge amounts of this stuff. It seems in fairly raw form, doesn't it? And
a nice story that I heard fairly recently. It was, in fact, I think the 10th of March this year. Somebody blogged on directgov.uk or direct.gov.uk, is that the DirectGov site? Somebody blogged to say, oh, we've got some data here. It's bicycle accidents with the year and the latitude and longitude. We've got it for 2005, 2006, 2007. And on the same blog, as you read down that blog of that day, the comments, a little while later, somebody said, you know what? You put that there in a proprietary format, and you should put that in an open format. So I've converted it into a comma-separated tab file. So it's the CSV file. And a little while later, somebody blogged to say, well, I've converted it into a KML file, which is something you can use to look at on a map, if you happen to have map software. And then the next day, the 11th of March, somebody blogged to say, well, here at, actually, it was the Times Online, we've taken that data and we've made it into, and we've mashed it up. So now you can go to our map and you can zoom in on your particular route to work, and you can figure out whether, given where the bike accidents have been, you should be biking somewhere else. So that's less than 48 hours. Okay, direct social benefit, direct from putting the data, zero extra cost. They put the data up, and there are always, if it's interesting data, there are people out there who will take it, who will convert it, who will do useful things with it. If you imagine a government department had decided to do that, they'd have decided they would have put the requirements document together, they would have put it out to tender. No, the whole thing would have been a 5-year project, they would have had a review afterwards. So get the data out there. Yes, if you want to make a fancy website, do it, but do it afterwards. Give us the data first, and then you might find you don't have to make the fancy website.